The last thing you want to happen when an error occurs in a program is for the program to just crash. Java provides exception handling for those situations so that the program provides some options besides just stopping. Here we look at some simple program errors and how to handle them with exceptions. Most of the time when you have an error in your Java programs, say for example you try to load a file that doesn't exist, then the system will throw an exception. That's how errors are reported. The phrasing that's used is throw exception. Rather than just try to describe it, I can show you a perfect example of Java throwing an exception. Start out declaring two variables. Now let's display the result. So you're guessing maybe that the result will be 0. But instead, if you look at my output window, you'll see that instead there was an exception. If you look at the exception description, it says slash or divide by 0. So we had a divide by 0 exception. Now, what you do not want is you do not want your program to crash like that when an exception is thrown. So to keep that from happening, Java has something called a try-catch statement. It works like this. Again, it's easier to show you an example. You start off with the keyword try and then start a block. Inside the block, you put code that you think could possibly cause an exception. Outside of that code, you write a catch clause, or the catch part of a try-catch. And we'll just do something simple right here. Whoops, that's not where the semicolon goes. It goes right here. There we are. Okay. Let's run the program, then I'll come back and show you what happens. Notice the program didn't stop. The output is not in red, indicating that our program was halted. So the program ran. It did print out java.lang.arithmetic expression divide by 0, but that's because we told it to. Here's what happens. The system tries to run the code inside the try. If it runs successfully, nothing happens. For example, if I change this to 1, and we try to divide 34 by 1, we get 34. If we change it back to 0 and try to run it, what happens is a divide by 0 exception is thrown on the int result equals numerator divided by denominator line. When that exception is thrown, if you have a catch or a catch clause or catch statement, it's really not a statement. This whole try catch is a statement. I like to call it a catch clause. If you have a catch clause that identifies the exception that's being thrown, then it will catch it and store it in the variable declared, EX, for example. Here I just displayed the two-string result. We can also do something called a print stack trace. Which will display the error also, or the exception. Notice the output's in red, a little bit different, but it's still the program ran successfully. It shows the same exception. The point here being that when you have code that you know can cause an exception to be thrown, you should catch it. A lot of programming constructs in Java, especially with file I/O, will require that you tell the compiler in advance that there's code coming that can cause an exception. But in this example, we simply just put everything inside a try, and if the code does throw an exception, then we catch it and handle it so that the program doesn't crash.